There are moments in life when words are not enough, when the weight on our hearts feels too heavy to carry alone. Moments when you have prayed, waited, hoped, and yet the answer still seems distant. Welcome to Timeless Prayer. If you are here right now, reading or listening to this prayer, it is not by accident. It is because your heart is searching for hope, and heaven is closer to you than you realize. Today, we come together in faith to lift up a mighty prayer for an urgent miracle through the powerful intercession of St Anthony of Padua, the saint known for miracles, lost causes, and impossible situations. St. Anthony has always been a refuge for those who feel overwhelmed, discouraged, or forgotten. He listens to the cries of the brokenhearted, and he carries them with love before the throne of God. Perhaps you are facing a situation that feels beyond human strength. Maybe it is a financial burden that keeps you awake at night, a sickness that drains your peace, a relationship that feels shattered, or a door that remains painfully closed no matter how many times you knock. You may feel tired, anxious, or even afraid to hope again. If that is you, know this: you are not weak for feeling this way. You are human, and God sees your struggle. This prayer is not just words spoken into the air. It is a sincere cry from the heart. It is a moment to pause, to breathe, and to allow faith to rise again within you. St. Anthony understands urgency. He understands desperation, and he understands the kind of faith that whispers, "Lord, I cannot do this alone." As you begin this prayer, I invite you to open your heart completely. Bring your worries, your fears, your unanswered questions, and even your doubts. You do not need perfect faith, only a willing heart. Even the smallest spark of trust can ignite a miracle. Let this be a sacred moment between you, St. Anthony, and God. A moment where you are seen, heard, and loved. Whether your miracle comes immediately or unfolds slowly over time, trust that something is already moving in your favor. Stay with this prayer. Pray with sincerity. Believe with your heart, and allow St. Anthony to intercede for you, guiding your plea to heaven with compassion and power. Today, we ask boldly. Today, we hope deeply. Today, we believe that miracles are still possible. As we move deeper into this moment of prayer, let us slow down and gently shift our focus. We have opened our hearts, we have acknowledged our need. Now, before we place our urgent requests before God, it is important to remember who we are turning to for intercession. Faith grows stronger when we truly know the one who walks beside us in prayer. And so, with calm hearts and open spirits, let us begin by honoring and calling upon St. Anthony of Padua, the faithful servant of God whose life continues to radiate hope, compassion, and miracles even today. St. Anthony of Padua, dear and gentle friend of those who suffer, today we speak your name with reverence and trust. You are not distant or unreachable. You are not a saint of the past locked away in history. You are alive in the hearts of those who call upon you, alive in the countless stories of hope, restoration, and miracles that continue to unfold through your intercession. When we say your name, St. Anthony, we do so with confidence, knowing that you listen with a compassionate heart. You are known throughout the world as the Saint of Miracles, the helper in desperate situations, the one who finds what is lost. Not only lost objects, but lost peace, lost hope, lost direction, and lost faith. How many people, weighed down by worry and fear, have whispered your name in moments of darkness and felt comforted? How many tears have fallen in silence, only to be gently lifted by the grace that flows through your prayers today? I join that countless number of souls who turn to you, trusting that you will not turn away. St. Anthony. What makes your intercession so powerful is not only the miracles attributed to you, but the way you lived your life. You loved God with an undivided heart. You served the poor, the forgotten, and the broken with humility and tenderness. You did not seek greatness for yourself. Instead, you allowed God's love to flow through you freely. Because of this, your voice carries great weight before the throne of God. You intercede not as a stranger, but as a beloved son who lived faithfully and loved deeply. When I think of you, St. Anthony, I do not imagine a distant figure surrounded by perfection. I imagine a compassionate presence, someone who understands human weakness, someone who knows what it means to struggle and yet trust completely in God. That is why it feels safe to come to you. That is why hearts open so easily in your presence. You remind us that holiness is not about being flawless, but about surrendering fully to God's love. You have been called upon in moments of panic, despair, and urgency, when doors seem closed, when answers feel delayed, when strength runs out. Your name is spoken with hope. And time again, stories emerge, stories of peace returning, of solutions appearing, of burdens lifting in ways that cannot be explained by human effort alone. These stories are not coincidences. They are signs of God's mercy working through your faithful intercession. St. Anthony, you are especially close to those who feel forgotten, those who feel like their prayers have gone unheard, those who wonder if God still sees them in the middle of their pain. Through you, they discover that heaven is not silent, that God's love is still active, and that even in the most urgent and impossible situations, grace can break through. Today, as I honor you, I do so not out of habit, but out of genuine trust. I acknowledge your role as a powerful intercessor, a bridge between human weakness and divine mercy. I believe that when you carry our prayers to God, you do so with great care, compassion, and urgency. You understand the weight of what we are facing. You understand the fears we struggle to name, and you understand the hope we hold on to, even when it feels fragile. St. Anthony, your life teaches us that God delights in working through humble hearts, that miracles are not reserved for the strong, but for those who trust, that when we place our needs in God's hands, surrendering control, incredible things can happen. Through your example, we learn to rely less on our own strength and more on God's endless mercy. As we honor you now, we also recognize that your intercession always leads us closer to God, never away from Him. You do not seek attention for yourself. You guide us gently toward Christ, reminding us that every miracle, every healing, every restoration comes from God alone. You are a faithful messenger of hope, pointing us toward divine love and infinite compassion. St. Anthony, thank you for being present with us in this prayer. Thank you for listening with patience and kindness. Thank you for reminding us that we are not alone in our struggles. As we continue, we place our trust in your intercession, confident that you are already at work, already praying for us, already opening paths that we cannot yet see. With hearts filled with respect and gratitude, we honor you, St. Anthony of Padua. Walk with us now as we bring forward our pain, our needs, and our urgent pleas. Strengthen our faith as we prepare to place everything into God's loving hands, trusting that through your intercession, hope will rise, peace will return, and miracles will unfold according to God's perfect will. Dear friend, let's pause for a moment. Take a slow breath. Allow your shoulders to relax. This is the part where we stop speaking about faith and begin speaking from the heart. St. Anthony does not ask us to be strong all the time. He does not expect perfect words or perfect faith. He simply invites us to come as we are. And if we are honest, Many of us come carrying things we rarely say out loud. Worries we keep tucked away. Fears we push aside during the day but feel deeply at night. Questions that linger in the quiet moments when no one else is around. This is where we are now. As we move forward, you do not need to hide anything. You do not need to explain yourself or justify your pain. Whatever is weighing on your heart, whether it feels big or small, urgent or confusing, you are allowed to bring it here. This prayer is not a performance. It is a safe place to be real. So gently, without pressure. Let us step into this next part together. Let us speak honestly, openly, and without fear, trusting that St. Anthony is listening with compassion and that God already knows the depths of our hearts. This is the moment where we lay down our burdens, one by one, and allow ourselves to be held by grace. St. Anthony, my dear friend and intercessor, I come to you now without masks and without defenses. I come as I am, tired, weary, carrying worries that have slowly taken up space in my heart and mind. There are days when I feel strong enough to keep going, and other days when even the smallest step forward feels overwhelming. Today, I choose not to pretend. I choose to be honest with you, because I know you understand what it means to carry the weight of human struggle. There is an urgency in my heart, St. Anthony, a quiet but persistent cry that I can no longer ignore. The situation I face feels heavy, complex, and beyond my control. I have tried to solve it on my own. I have worried about it in silence. I have replayed the same thoughts over and over, hoping to find an answer, a solution, a sign. And yet, here I am, realizing that my strength is limited and that I need help beyond myself. Perhaps this burden is something I rarely speak about, something I keep hidden because I do not want to worry others or appear weak, but you see it clearly. You see the sleepless nights, the anxious thoughts, the moments of fear that arise when I think about the future. You see the uncertainty that makes my heart feel restless, and the questions that seem to have no clear answers. St. Anthony, I admit that sometimes I feel afraid of what might happen if things do not change, afraid of losing something important, afraid of continuing to hope only to be disappointed again. There are moments when discouragement whispers that my prayers are too small or that my situation is too complicated. But even in those moments, something within me still reaches out, still believes, still longs for peace. This is why I come to you now with urgency, not because I demand a miracle, but because I deeply need one. I need God's intervention in a way that only heaven can provide. I need clarity where there is confusion, relief where there is pressure, healing where there is pain. I am aware that time feels precious right now, that delays feel heavier, and that waiting has become difficult. Still, I bring all of this to you, trusting that my urgency is not a burden to you, but a call you receive with compassion. St. Anthony, I place before you every detail of this situation, even the parts I struggle to put into words. You know what weighs on me the most. You know where my heart aches and where my faith feels fragile. I ask you to take this urgency seriously, to carry it gently but firmly before God, and to intercede with the love of one who understands human suffering. I do not come to you claiming to deserve a miracle. I come acknowledging my need. I come aware of my limitations and my dependence on God's mercy. And in doing so, I feel something shift within me. Not because the problem has disappeared, but because I am no longer carrying it alone. St. Anthony, teach me that urgency does not mean despair. Teach me that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but an act of trust. Help me to believe that even when my situation feels rushed and overwhelming, God's timing is still guided by love and wisdom. help me surrender my anxiety and replace it with faith, one breath at a time. There are moments when my thoughts run ahead of me, imagining worst-case scenarios, fearing outcomes I cannot control. In those moments, I ask you to calm my spirit, to remind me that God is present in this very moment, not only in the future I worry about, to help me focus on what I can entrust to God today, right now, without carrying tomorrow's fears on my shoulders. St. Anthony, I ask you to stand with me in this urgency, to be my advocate when words fail, to speak on my behalf when my heart feels too heavy to pray. I trust that you are already at work, already listening, already interceding with a love that does not tire or hesitate. As I open my heart to you, I feel the courage to keep hoping. Even if the path ahead is unclear, I choose to believe that this urgency, this pressing need, is not ignored by heaven. I choose to believe that God sees my sincerity and hears my cry, even when the answer takes time to unfold. Thank you, St. Anthony, for receiving my vulnerability with kindness. Thank you for reminding me that I do not need to have everything figured out before coming to God. Thank you for walking with me through this moment of need, offering comfort where there is fear and reassurance where there is doubt. With my heart laid open before you, I am ready to move forward in faith, ready to trust more deeply, ready to place this urgent need into God's hands, believing that through your intercession, something will shift within me, around me, and in the situation I now surrender. After opening our hearts and laying our burdens before St. Anthony, something quiet begins to happen within us. The situation may not have changed yet. The problem may still be there, but there is a subtle shift, an inner space where fear begins to loosen its grip. This is the sacred turning point of prayer, the moment when we move from simply expressing our pain to choosing trust, from naming our urgency to reaffirming our faith. And so now, gently and intentionally, we lift our eyes beyond what troubles us and place our hope once again in God. St. Anthony, as I stand here with my heart exposed and my needs laid bare, I now choose to take a step of faith, not because everything suddenly makes sense, and not because my situation has already been resolved, but because I believe that God is still present, still listening, and still working, even in ways I cannot yet see. I confess that faith is not always easy. There are moments when doubt feels louder than hope, when fear speaks more convincingly than trust. There are times when waiting becomes exhausting, and silence feels heavy. Yet even in those moments, something within me continues to whisper that God has not abandoned me, that His love has not withdrawn, that His promises are still true. St. Anthony, help me hold on to that whisper. Today, I choose to believe that my life is not defined by this single difficulty. I choose to believe that my story is still unfolding, and that God's grace is active within it. Even when the path ahead feels uncertain, I trust that God sees the full picture, every step, every delay, every hidden purpose that I cannot yet understand. I proclaim my faith not as someone who has all the answers, but as someone who has learned that relying on God is safer than relying on my own understanding. I declare that God is greater than my fear, stronger than my weakness, and more faithful than my doubts. Even when my faith feels small, I believe that God honors sincerity over perfection. St. Anthony, remind me that miracles often begin quietly, that transformation does not always arrive with thunder and lightning, but sometimes with peace slowly returning to a restless heart. With strength rising little by little, with hope being restored one day at a time. Help me recognize these gentle signs of God's presence so that I do not overlook the work He is already doing within me. I choose to trust that no prayer spoken with honesty is ever wasted. That every tear, every sigh, every moment of surrender matters. I believe that God hears me, not only when my words are confident, but also when they tremble, not only when I pray with certainty, but also when I pray through uncertainty. St. Anthony, stand beside me as I make this declaration of faith. When my mind begins to replay worst-case scenarios, help me redirect my thoughts toward God's goodness. When impatience creeps in, remind me that waiting does not mean being forgotten. When discouragement tries to settle in my heart, help me remember that hope is an act of courage. I place my trust in God's timing, even when it does not align with my own. I believe that delays are not denials, and that unanswered prayers are not signs of rejection. Sometimes they are invitations to grow deeper, to trust more fully, and to surrender more honestly. St. Anthony, teach me how to hope without conditions, to believe without demanding immediate proof, to rest in the knowledge that God's love is not dependent on outcomes. Help me understand that faith is not about controlling the future, but about trusting the one who holds it. Today, I speak words of hope over my life. I declare that peace will return to my heart, that clarity will come in time, that healing, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, is possible. I trust that God can open doors I cannot open myself, heal wounds I cannot touch, and provide solutions beyond my imagination. Even now, before anything changes on the outside, I allow faith to reshape what is happening within me. I let go of constant worry. I loosen my grip on fear. I choose to believe that God is already preparing what I need, even if I do not yet see it. St. Anthony, help me anchor my hope not in circumstances, but in God's unchanging character. Help me remember that He is compassionate, attentive, and faithful, that He sees the details of my life and cares deeply about what concerns me. As I continue this prayer, I carry forward this declaration of faith, not as a final destination, but as a foundation that will support me through whatever comes next. Whether the answer arrives quickly or unfolds slowly, I commit to walking forward with trust, patience, and openness. Thank you, St. Anthony, for encouraging me to hope again, for reminding me that faith does not erase difficulty, but it transforms how I face it. With this renewed trust, I am ready to move forward, ready to place my request fully into God's hands, believing that with Him, nothing is impossible. Beloved, after choosing to trust again, after daring to hope even when the path remains unclear, we arrive at a moment that feels both vulnerable and sacred. This is the moment when faith becomes bold, not loud or demanding, but brave enough to ask. We have acknowledged our pain, reaffirmed our trust, and now, gently but honestly, we place our deepest request into God's hands. This is where we speak the need we carry, the one that brought us here, the one our hearts return to again and again. With St. Anthony beside us, we ask not with fear, but with humility, love, and surrender. St. Anthony, with faith awakening once more in my heart, I now come to the moment I have been quietly preparing for. I come to ask, not because I believe I deserve a special treatment, and not because I wish to control the outcome, but because I know that God invites His children to speak openly, honestly, and trustingly. So today, I place my urgent need before you with humility and hope. You already know what this miracle means to me. You know how long I have carried it. You know how many times I have thought about it in silence, how often it has surfaced in my prayers, and how deeply it affects my peace. There are days when I try to be patient, telling myself to wait calmly, and other days when the weight of it presses so heavily on my heart that I can barely focus on anything else. This is the need I now surrender. St. Anthony, I ask you to take this request and lift it before God with love and urgency. I ask you to speak on my behalf when my own words feel insufficient. Present this need not just as a problem to be solved, but as a cry of the heart longing for relief, healing, direction, and peace. I trust that you understand the seriousness of what I face and that you intercede with compassion and care. I ask for a miracle, St. Anthony. I do not say this lightly. I know that miracles are not magic, and they do not always come in the way we expect. But I also know that nothing is impossible for God. I believe that He can change circumstances, soften hearts, open doors, restore what has been broken, and provide solutions beyond human understanding. Whether this miracle involves healing, provision, reconciliation, clarity, or inner peace, I ask that God's grace touch every part of this situation. I ask for movement where there has been stagnation, light where there has been confusion, and hope where discouragement has taken root. I ask not for an escape from life's challenges, but for God's hand to be clearly present within them. St. Anthony, I place no demands on heaven. I do not give ultimatums or conditions. Instead, I ask with trust, knowing that God's wisdom is greater than my own. If the answer comes quickly, help me receive it with gratitude and humility. If it unfolds slowly, give me patience and perseverance. And if it comes in a way I do not immediately understand, grant me the grace to trust that God's plan is still guided by love. I ask you, St. Anthony, to help align my heart with God's will. If there are fears within me that need healing, touch them. If there are expectations that need softening, gently reshape them. If there are attachments that keep me from fully trusting, help me release them into God's care. This miracle I seek is important to me, but I also know that my life is more than this single request. Teach me to hold this prayer with open hands rather than clenched fists, to desire God's intervention without losing my peace, to hope deeply without allowing fear to dominate my spirit. St. Anthony, I believe that even now, something is happening. Perhaps not in ways I can measure or see, but in ways that matter. Perhaps God is already preparing the answer, arranging circumstances, or strengthening me for what lies ahead. I trust that no sincere prayer is ever ignored, and that God responds in His perfect time. As I place this request before you, I feel both vulnerable and relieved. Vulnerable because asking requires honesty and courage. Relieved because I am no longer carrying this alone. I am placing it into hands far more capable than mine. Help me remain attentive to the signs of God's presence, the small shifts, the moments of unexpected peace, the gentle nudges that guide me forward. Let me recognize your intercession not only in dramatic breakthroughs, but also in quiet reassurances that remind me I am loved and supported. St. Anthony, if this miracle is granted according to God's will, I promise to honor His goodness with gratitude and humility. I will remember this moment. I will remember that hope was restored when fear threatened to take over. And I will strive to be a source of encouragement to others who find themselves waiting, praying, and hoping for their own miracle. And if the answer requires patience, I ask you to stay with me in the waiting, to remind me that waiting is not wasted time, that God is still present even in uncertainty, that faith grows not only in receiving, but also in trusting. I place this urgent request fully into God's hands now. I release my need to control the outcome. I surrender my timeline. I choose trust over anxiety, faith over fear, hope over despair. St. Anthony, thank you for walking with me to this moment. Thank you for carrying my prayer with care and compassion. I trust that whatever unfolds next will be guided by God's wisdom and love. With a humble heart and a hopeful spirit, I ask for this miracle, not as a demand, but as a prayer placed gently into the hands of heaven. Now that the request has been spoken and placed gently into God's hands, something changes within us. There is no longer the same urgency to explain or control. The words have been said, the heart has been opened, the miracle has been entrusted. This is the moment where prayer begins to rest, where striving gives way to surrender, where asking slowly transforms into gratitude, and trust becomes deeper than fear. With St. Anthony still beside us, we now enter this final space of prayer, not to ask again, but to remain, to give thanks, and to place our lives fully into God's care. St. Anthony, as I come to the end of this prayer, I do not come with emptiness, but with a heart that feels lighter, calmer, and more at peace. I have spoken my need, I have asked for a miracle, and now I choose to surrender the outcome completely into God's hands. Not because I no longer care, but because I trust. Trust that God's love is wiser than my plans, deeper than my understanding, and stronger than my fear. In this moment, I let go of the need to know how and when everything will unfold. I release the constant questions that have occupied my mind. I loosen my grip on expectations and timelines. I acknowledge that while my heart longs for answers, God's timing is guided by a wisdom that sees beyond what I can see. And so, I rest. St. Anthony, thank you for walking with me through every step of this prayer. Thank you for listening with patience and compassion. Thank you for carrying my request to heaven with care. Even now, before anything changes outwardly, I am grateful. Grateful not because everything is resolved, but because I am no longer alone in this journey. Gratitude, I am learning, is not reserved only for moments of success or relief. It is a quiet decision to trust God even in uncertainty. And so today, I thank God for His presence in my life, for the strength that has carried me this far, for the grace that sustains me even when answers are delayed, for the unseen work already taking place within me and around me. St. Anthony, help me remain faithful in this posture of surrender. When impatience tries to return, remind me of this moment of peace. When fear attempts to reclaim space in my heart, gently guide me back to trust. Help me remember that faith is not proven by control, but by confidence in God's goodness. I place my entire life into God's care, not just this request, but everything I am and everything I carry, my past, with all its lessons and wounds, my present, with its challenges and responsibilities, and my future, still unknown, yet already held in God's loving hands. I trust that nothing in my life is wasted, and that God can bring good even from what feels broken or unfinished. St. Anthony, I promise to walk forward in faith, regardless of the outcome. If the miracle I seek arrives clearly and unmistakably, I will receive it with humility and gratitude, knowing it is a gift, not an entitlement. And if the answer unfolds differently than I expect, I will still choose trust, believing that God's plan is rooted in love. I also promise to let this experience shape how I live, to become more patient with others, more compassionate toward those who are struggling, more aware of the quiet ways God works in everyday life. I ask for the grace to be a witness of hope, not through perfect words, but through a peaceful heart and a faithful life. St. Anthony, inspire me to remember this prayer when future challenges arise. Let it remind me that I have already placed my trust in God and that He has never failed me. Help me recall this moment when doubts surface, and let it strengthen my resolve to continue walking in faith. I give thanks for the blessings I often overlook, the breath in my lungs, the strength to keep going, the people who support me, the moments of quiet grace that sustain me each day. I thank God not only for what He gives, but for who He is, faithful, compassionate, and endlessly patient. As I conclude this prayer, I feel a renewed sense of purpose, a gentle confidence that no matter what happens next, I will not walk alone. St. Anthony remains near, God remains faithful, and my heart remains open to grace. I entrust myself fully now. I release worry. I choose peace. I accept God's will with a heart willing to learn, grow, and love more deeply. Whatever comes next, I face it with faith, knowing that God's mercy never fails and that His love will guide every step I take. St. Anthony, thank you for being my companion in prayer. Continue to intercede for me, to protect me, and to guide me closer to God each day. May my life reflect gratitude, trust, and quiet confidence in God's plan. With this prayer complete, I move forward not with certainty about the future, but with certainty about God's love, and that, I know, is enough. As we come to the end of this prayer, let us pause, not in haste, but in quiet awareness. Something holy has taken place here. Even if nothing around you has changed yet, something within you has. You showed up. You opened your heart. You trusted enough to pray, enough to hope, enough to place your deepest need into God's hands. And that alone is an act of courage. Prayer is not always about immediate answers. Sometimes it is about remembering who we are and who walks with us. It is about allowing God's presence to steady us when life feels overwhelming. Today, through the gentle intercession of St. Anthony, you have chosen faith over fear, trust over despair, and hope over isolation. That choice matters more than you may realize. If you are still waiting, know this: waiting does not mean you are forgotten. Silence does not mean absence. God works in ways that are often quiet, patient, and unseen. And St. Anthony continues to intercede for you even when your words run out. Hold on to that truth when doubts creep in. Before you leave this moment, take a deep breath. Let peace settle into your heart. Remind yourself that you are not carrying your burden alone anymore. You have placed it into loving hands. Hands far stronger and wiser than your own. If this prayer has brought you even a small sense of peace, I invite you to respond, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude and faith. Take a moment to like this prayer, share it with someone who may be silently struggling, or write a short intention in the comments. Sometimes, naming our prayer aloud becomes part of the miracle itself. If you feel comfortable, return to this prayer again in the coming days. Let it become a place of refuge, not pressure. And if you believe in the power of prayer communities, stay connected. Walk this journey with others who are also hoping, waiting, and trusting. Most importantly, allow this prayer to shape how you move forward. Carry gentleness with you. Be patient with yourself. And when fear resurfaces, remember this moment. Remember that you chose faith. Thank you for praying here. Thank you for trusting this space with your heart. Thank you for believing, even if your belief feels fragile. Every prayer spoken with honesty is precious. Every tear offered in faith is seen. And your presence here matters more than you know. Whether you came with strong faith or with quiet doubt, you were welcomed just the same. God meets us exactly where we are, not where we think we should be. May God bless you with peace that calms your heart when worries arise. May He grant you strength when the waiting feels heavy. May He surround you with comfort when answers take time. And may St. Anthony walk beside you, guiding your prayers, strengthening your trust, and reminding you that miracles, both seen and unseen, are always possible. May your heart remain open, your spirit remain hopeful, and your faith continue to grow, one gentle step at a time. Whatever you are facing, may you never forget this truth. You are loved, you are heard, and you are never alone. Go forward now with trust. Go forward with hope. And may God's grace accompany you today and always. O Lord God Almighty, in this sacred moment of stillness, as every word has now been spoken and every intention has been placed before you, I come before you with a heart laid bare. You see me completely. You know what I carry, the worries I hide behind my smiles, the fears I whisper only in the quiet of the night, the prayers I have repeated so many times that my voice has grown tired, but my hope has refused to die. Today, I place everything into your hands through the loving intercession of St Anthony of Padua. I surrender my urgent needs, my impossible situations, and the miracles I long for but cannot create on my own. St. Anthony, faithful servant of God, gentle companion of the broken, and powerful intercessor before heaven, I come to you not as someone strong, but as someone sincere. I ask you to take my prayer, this prayer born from longing, from waiting, from faith that has been tested yet still remains, and lift it to the throne of God. If my words are imperfect, complete them with your love. If my faith is weak, strengthen it with your hope. If my heart is heavy, help me place it gently into God's mercy. Lord, you know exactly what I need. You know the miracle I'm asking for, whether it is healing of the body, restoration of the heart, peace in my mind, freedom from fear, or provision in moments of lack. Nothing is hidden from you. Nothing is impossible for you. If it is your will, let the doors that seem closed begin to open. Let the burdens I carry be lightened. Let the confusion clear, the pain soften, and the road ahead become visible again. But even if the answer takes time, teach me to trust you while I wait. Teach me to believe that delays are not denials, that silence is not abandonment, and that you are working even when I cannot see it. St. Anthony, stand beside me in this waiting. Remind me that countless souls before me have cried out in desperation and witnessed God's mercy unfold in ways they never could have imagined. Help me hold on to faith when discouragement tries to take over. Help me remember that God's timing is guided by wisdom and love, not by haste. Lord Jesus, I place my life, my future, and my unanswered prayers into your sacred heart. Cover me with your peace, protect my thoughts from despair, guard my heart from bitterness, and fill my spirit with quiet confidence that you are near. Remove from me every fear that tells me I am alone. Remove every lie that tells me my prayers do not matter. Replace them with truth, hope, and light. May your Holy Spirit breathe new life into my soul. Renew my strength when I feel exhausted. Restore my joy when it feels distant. And teach me to recognize your presence in small signs, gentle nudges, and unexpected blessings along the way. St. Anthony, I entrust my family to your care. I place my loved ones under your protection. May no one connected to me be without hope, without guidance, or without the comfort of God's love. Intercede for those who are suffering silently, for those who feel forgotten, for those who are praying with tears instead of words. Let them feel heaven close to them tonight. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Let the miracle I receive, whether immediate or gradual, become a testimony that strengthens others. May I never forget the grace I receive. May gratitude shape my life, and may my faith grow deeper not only in moments of need, but in moments of joy and abundance as well. I promise, Lord, to walk forward with humility, to trust you more than my fears, to lean on you more than my own understanding, and to return to prayer not only when I am desperate, but when I am thankful. St. Anthony, thank you for your compassion, your closeness, and your tireless intercession. Thank you for reminding me that miracles are real, hope is alive, and God's love never fails. As I conclude this prayer, I do not walk away empty-handed. I walk away carrying peace, trust, and the quiet certainty that heaven has heard me into your hands. O Lord, I place everything. Amen.